Hi, and welcome to History Made Simply, your one-stop history hop back in time, where each week we'll be uncovering history's secrets for you. Make sure to like this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for weekly History Made Simply episodes. On today's episode, get ready to pull on your Wellington boots and dig deep in the countryside as we step back in time to 1550 to 1850 to the British Agricultural Revolution. Who would have thought that these 300 years would be so important? They naturally help shape food today. Let's find out how. Agricultural, put simply, means the science and occupation of cultivating the land, for either preparing the soil, producing crops grown and rearing livestock. It involved focusing on tailoring how the land, the forest, the fisheries, the livestock and crops were farmed in a methodical and purposeful way. It's farming on a schedule with the output of a much more efficient and greater yield. In Britain, in 1500, agricultural output per agricultural worker steadily increased from 50 to around 65 in 1550. By 1600 it was 90, over 100 by 1650, then 150 by 1750, then rapidly increasing to over 250 in 1850. Over 300 years agricultural production increased fivefold. No magic beans were responsible for the cultivation to increase fivefold. But what we do know is that during this period, enclosure of agricultural land led to a greater efficiency in terms of use and number of workers required to farm it. Put simply, once agricultural land was divided up into ownership, it was easier to plan what the land was best for, and, for someone accountable, worked out how many workers they needed for the farming of that land. With the agricultural land defined, it had the obvious effect of absolutely defining who owned the land and was responsible for it, and removed common rights such as fishing and foraging. To simply put it, the landowner could stop people helping themselves, ruining crops, removing timber for fires, charcoal, and of course, it made someone responsible for vermin such as rabbits. Landowners were effective in preserving the land against the likes of Peter and his motley crew. With owning land comes great responsibility, and now with responsibility comes accountability, which was great for the agricultural land. Landowners would now improve the drainage of the land, fertilise the land and add substances such as chalk to heavy clay land for the greater yield per acre. Before this, when the agricultural land didn't belong to anyone, no one was responsible for it, or in turn did anything to improve it. Now, with owners, great changes were afoot. Even boggy land was reclaimed to help increase the amount of cultivation overall. With these improvements, it had the impact of better cultivation. This simply means improvements improve the quality and amount of food and non-food products for farming the land. During the period 1648 to 1660, these 12 years during our British Agricultural Revolution witnessed the Cromwellian Republic. Since 1550, agricultural revolution was already in motion, but during these 12 years it saw a large number of English landowners self-exile with the Stuart royal family to Holland. Holland at this time were also experiencing the agricultural revolution, and there were two crucial factors the Dutch were doing that England were not. The Dutch, in their agricultural revolution, had realised the importance of crop rotation. This meant that instead of leaving land fallow during the growing season, they instead planted more crops again, which improved the soil rather than degrade it. So no resting of lands was needed. This in turn meant that a higher level of employment for agricultural workers were needed, as farming and harvesting stopped for no one, not even resting soil these days, and a greater supply of fodder for animals, increasing the overall national numbers of herds of cattle and pigs. The other key element to the Dutch agricultural revolution was they had developed a much more efficient plough which only required 2 oxen to pull it rather than 6 oxen pulling a plough in England. Not sure what a plough is? It's an old school tractor pulled by oxen, not an engine to harvest the crops. The Dutch, put simply, were experts at reclaiming wet land for crop growing. The Cromwellian Republic was over pretty quick, and the restoration of the monarchy was returned to England in 1660. This simply means Oliver Cromwell and his politics with the country was thrown out, and the royal family rolled back into town, and with them they brought the Dutch's agricultural revolutions with them. Standing in England and looking in the opposite direction of Europe to the Americas instead during the 15th century, there were new crops crossing the Atlantic as well. Most notable crops were the ever important potato and maize. Maize is a pretty special crop because it grows higher up hills than current crops in England like wheat, oat and rye. Suddenly, hills can be used to grow maize crops even higher, maximising the existing land in England even further. Who knew the hills could have a purpose other than rolling cheese down? With all these great steps in agricultural revolution in Britain from 1550 to 1850, it really was a 300-year commitment to maximising the potential of land to increase the cultivation for the country. So while it appears the revolution finished in the 18th century in England, it wasn't quite finished yet. The agricultural revolution spread its harvesting wings into Wales, Scotland and Ireland. Revolution in Wales, Scotland and Ireland led to new discoveries, such as fertilisers being introduced and recognised as improving yields per acre. Put simple, guano and bird droppings fertilise the crops and land and increase the food and non-food products produced by the land. Who knew our feathered friend's bird poo was so crucial to the food we eat? And while this agricultural revolution was taking hold across Britain in the 18th century, the development of a canal network was created. With their longboats and locks traversing up and down Britain, suddenly this development permitted relatively fast, cheap transport for all of the fresh food, such as vegetables, milk, preserved foods such as cheese and processed pork items such as pies, bacon and hams, and not forgetting the live animals from their source to market. The canal networks changed the way food and resources were transported, and for the greater good. The canal network was fantastic, but another episode for another day. So, the British agricultural revolution led to some important factors for the population. Firstly, here was an absolute increase in both the amount of calories available to the people of the British Isles. Suddenly, the people were eating more food as more was available. Secondly, the increase in foods and their supply became more affordable and were available in greater quantities at lower prices. Thirdly, with the canal network, the availability was even greater in towns and cities, transported quicker out of the cultivated lands of the countryside. And fourthly, there was of course a significant increase of the variety of food available. This naturally improved the average diet in the 18th century, leading to the fantastic consequence of generally improved health and lifespan for the population. Needless to say, the agricultural revolution to increase our cultivating workforce to increase food and non-food products, and the canal network to transport it. With the self-exile of the landowners to Holland, it further improved the revolution with the Dutch's amazing advances as well. And of course, with this massive increase of food production per farm worker, there was a surplus labour available to move to the new towns that were developing, primarily in the north and Midlands of England. With this increased surplus of workers now available to migrate south, it supported the massive expansion of manufacturing and mining, the core industries there, which of course led to the Industrial Revolution. But that really is another story for another day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and watch our next episode.